You, in league with State Senator Republican Barrow Peacock, were the two guys who, if memory serves, it was your, I don't want to say legislation, but you commissioned, or you were the ones pushing for the study that said, we could use a law school here at Southern University. Regent study comes back yesterday, day before. Shreveport doesn't need law school. Let's start from the beginning, why it does. Then tell me about the study and what you know, and I assume why you think they're crazy, huh?
Well, this is a part of the larger discussion that you and I and Aaron and others have had regarding Shreveport and Northwest Louisiana over the last decade plus. And that is the overall needs and inadequacies of our higher education system in this part of the state.
I don't want to get way off track, but we got a half hour. Mm-hmm. You have made the point religiously, repeatedly, about higher education didn't come to this part of the state until the mid-1960s.
Correct. Actually, the year I was born, the legislation that created Southern University Shreveport, LSU Shreveport, and grades 13 and 14 for the Bossier Parish School Board did not pass until June of 1965. It's also the same year the legislation by former U.S. Senator J. Bennett Johnson, at that time State Representative J. Bennett Johnson, that created the Shreveport Medical School, passed as well. So when you look at publicly funded higher education in Northwest Louisiana, when other parts of the state, other parts of the country were getting in this in the 19th century, early parts of the 20th century at the latest, we didn't get into it until well into the 60s.
Is that because of an indifference by legislators and or even educators or the general population in this part of the state? Or does that go back to those folks down south? Well, they don't like us much.
The best explanation that I have come across over the years is contained within a 2003 speech that was given by former Mayor Jim Gardner, the Shreveport Bar Association, where he talks about the economic history of Shreveport. And I start as a river town, agrarian community, transitioning into oil and gas moving in terms of the operational white-collar aspects of it to Houston, our efforts to move into manufacturing, and then realizing that we, moving in towards the 21st century, which is going to be a more knowledge-based economy, we need publicly funded higher education. But we were late to the game. And so what Mayor Gardner contended was that simply education in general was not a great priority for us in this area until well into the 20th century. We got Centenary, we moved in over into the Highland area, but in terms of publicly funded higher education, it was just simply not one of the areas of focus for us as a region. In fact, many people don't know that we almost lost Barksdale Air Force Base.
No.
In a tiff between former Mayor Lee Emmett Thomas and then Governor / U.S. Senator Huey P. Long, because there were aspects of getting that deal done that needed to be signed off on by the governor.
Wow.
We were annexing 22,000 acres. Mm-hmm. They were outside the city limits of Shreveport. They were over in Bossier Parish. We had to get that into the city limits of Shreveport, needed to sign off by the governor. But the governor was in a long-standing tiff with Mayor Thomas over Shreveport's refusal to accept Governor Long's free textbooks. Mayor Thomas contended we don't need anybody's free textbooks up in Shreveport.
Free books.
Free books. So there's been this issue involving resources committed and focused to education in general, and then higher education in particular in terms of our part of the state.
Now, there are probably, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, probably not two legislators in Baton Rouge who disagree more on stuff than you and Republican Senator Barrow Peacock. But you guys were arm in arm on this Southern University Law School study. How did you get that? Who did you go to? How much? How many markers did you have to call in? How much pressure did you have to put on? Or did the Board of Regents, did they get, yeah, that's a good idea, and then they come back and say, no, you guys don't need a law school?
Well, we came at it from two different approaches. Senator Peacock came at it from the approach of any of the folks right now who are involved in higher education having a chance to be able to step forward and say we want to look at the possibility of a law school in Shreveport. I understood that the only particular group that would actually be interested would be Southern, because we'd had some of those prior discussions involving LSU and the UL system, which does not have a law school, and Southern had already expressed interest. In terms of how you expand additional higher education programs inside the state, the Constitution calls for it to be done through a process that starts with the Board of Regents, Louisiana Board of Regents on Higher Education. They are prompted by action of the legislature. That expression of action or desired action on the part of the legislature comes in the form of a concurrent resolution. And so both myself as well as Senator Peacock drafted, offered, and ultimately passed through the process concurrent resolutions calling for this law school study. Mine focused on Southern, Senator Peacock's focused on higher education in general. But the Board of Regents combined them into one. The folks at the Parish Commission were kind enough to step forward and cover the cost of it. And here we are right now.
Was when they started this study, honestly, were you optimistic, or did you feel like they were just kind of patting you on the back, say, yeah, we'll do this for you, but we both know how it's going to end up?
Well, I've gotten to a point, now that I'm in my 50s, that I understand that patience and the long game is something that I have to develop a greater appreciation of. And so while I was optimistic,
In other words, yeah.
I was optimistic that they would step forward and do the right thing. But life and experience had taught me that this was probably going to be another one of those circuitous processes. And especially knowing the group that had been retained by the Board of Regents to conduct the study and the previous judgments that they had rendered regarding the state of Northwest Louisiana, the Shreveport area in particular, I knew that this was the first step, but that was not going to be one that would be smooth or easy.